I never really thought of myself as a spiritual person. Friend laughing about something silly when it all is never really played a big part in my life. Maybe I believed in something bigger than us, but I never really dwelled on it. My routine was simple: school, social media, hanging out with friends. I lived one day at a time, not really thinking about what the future held, until that one fateful day. It started like any other day. I was crossing the street with my best friend, laughing about something silly, when it all happened in a flash. A deafening car horn, panicked screams, and then the impact. I felt my body being thrown away like a rag doll. That's when I realized I was dead. What happened? Instead, I was enveloped. That wasn't heaven. The darkness, it was as if something was waiting, as if burned. A brilliant light broke through, but with something even more unsettling. In his presence, there was no room for apologies or pain. I saw myself laughing at those times, but I had pushed it aside. People were running, screaming, hiding from panic seized me, and I tried to scream. I tried to run to my body, but I had no legs, no voice. I was simply consciousness. Then, without warning, an invisible force started dragging me back with indescribable power. At first, I thought I was being taken to heaven, drawn towards the light. But that's not what happened. Instead, I was enveloped in darkness. And it wasn't just any darkness, it was dense and suffocating, as if it were a living entity wrapping itself around me. The deep silence was broken by whispers, voices mingling with each other, speaking in a language I couldn't understand. A visceral, primal fear took hold of me. The coldness I felt wasn't purely physical. It penetrated me to the bone. That's when I understood that something was wrong. That wasn't heaven. The darkness continued to pull me in, and with every passing second, my terror intensified. I struggled against it, trying to hold on to something, but there was nothing but that oppressive void. The voices grew louder, some laughing, some crying, and others twisting my name in mockery. I felt something approaching, something invisible, and it filled me with a fear I had never known before. It was as if something was waiting, eager to consume me. For the first time, I truly understood what absolute despair was. There was no one who could help me. I was utterly alone. And the worst part was realizing that this place belonged to me. Then, suddenly, a voice echoed through the darkness. "Stop!" The moment that word resonated, the shadow recoiled, as if burned. A brilliant light broke through, slicing the gloom like a sword of fire. The heat of that light was so intense that I felt completely exposed, as if all my secrets, all my lies, all my hidden flaws were laid bare. And there, amidst that blinding radiance, I saw him. I didn't need any explanation. I recognized him instantly. Jesus was before me. His gaze wasn't filled with anger or condemnation, but with something even more unsettling: the truth. He looked at me as if he could see everything I had been, and everything I could have been. At that moment, I realized something I had never considered before. My entire life had been a succession of decisions, and I had made the wrong ones. I wanted to speak, to ask why all this was happening, to beg for another chance. But I couldn't. In his presence, there was no room for apologies or arguments. I could only feel. And what overwhelmed me was the weight of every wrong step I had taken, every time I had ignored that inner voice, every lie I had told, every moment I had turned away from the truth. Then, without him uttering a single word, the visions began. My life unfolded before me like a movie, each scene imprinted with a real, palpable pain. I saw myself laughing at those who spoke of God. I saw myself ridiculing those who cherished their faith. I saw myself turning away from the suffering of others simply to avoid getting involved. The most painful thing was realizing all the opportunities I had had to change, opportunities I had wasted without a second thought. Not that I had never felt a void or wondered if there was something more. I had felt that emptiness many times, but I had pushed it aside, caught in the frenzy of life and the desire to live my own way. Now, standing before him, I understood the high price I had paid. Then, the visions changed. I no longer saw echoes of the past, but glimpses of a future yet to be written. The world that unfolded before me was unrecognizable. The sky was covered in a grotesque darkness, and the streets were engulfed in flames. People were running, screaming, hiding from an unseen threat. I could feel it, the pure terror in the air, a suffocating fear that something was about to devour us all. Dark figures moved among the living, and the most chilling thing was that people weren't fleeing from them, but following them as if hypnotized, marching blindly toward their own destruction. Then I heard his voice again, and then came the smell. A horrible smell filled the air, cries of pain, regret, the look of someone who, too late, realized he would. The despair was so overwhelming that I screamed, trembling uncontrollably as I looked at Jesus, nodded on me like a final and inescapable sentence. I felt myself being pulled down, like falling from the sky. There was no rushing wind, no feeling of reaching the bottom, just a growing heat. And then came the smell. A horrible smell of burning flesh, decay, and something unnatural filled my senses. Terror gripped me before I could even see my surroundings. And then I crashed to the ground. The ground was hard and burning hot. When I looked up, all I saw was destruction. Flames raged everywhere, but they weren't normal flames. They didn't just burn. Screams of agony filled the air, cries of pain, regret, and absolute hopelessness. And that's when I saw the faces. Faces of people I knew, classmates, acquaintances, even people I had only seen in passing. They were there, twisted in pain, weeping, crying out my name as if begging me to save them. One of them was a close friend, someone I had known for years. But the look in his eyes was unlike anything I had ever seen. The look of someone who, too late, realized he would never escape that place. I wanted to run. I longed to escape. But there was nowhere to go, as if this nightmare had no end. And the worst part was the crushing certainty that hope was completely gone. Time had no meaning there. There was no tomorrow, no afterwards. Only relentless pain and eternal torment prevailed. The despair was so overwhelming that I screamed with all my might, begging for someone to pull me out of that abyss. And then I felt a strong hand grab my wrist. The same voice that had once pulled me from darkness returned, declaring, "You cannot help them now." In that instant, I was ripped away from that nightmare. All the heat, the screams, the overwhelming despair vanished in a flash, and I found myself back in his presence. I was trembling uncontrollably as I looked at Jesus. No words needed to be spoken between us. He sensed the devastation within me, understanding exactly how broken I was. With deep sadness in his eyes, he said, "People choose that fate by rejecting me, living as if nothing matters until it's too late." I felt like my heart was going to explode, if it was even still beating. His words weighed on me like a final and inescapable sentence. They choose that fate. I wanted to scream that it wasn't fair, that no one willingly chooses to be dragged into that darkness, that no one truly desires that end. Yet deep down, I knew it was the harsh truth. I had spent my entire life ignoring the. Now I saw clearly that the world was full of getting closer. I could sense the essence of what lay close to them. I couldn't understand it. It was just a distant thought. How many went as people believed they were destined for heaven, that nothing could fill? Yet I pretended everything was fine. Standing before him, the answer was undeniable. My whole life had been a warning that I refused to listen to. Now I saw clearly that the world was full of people like me, living as if there was always time, to make things right, as if none of it was real. But it was, more real and raw than anything I had ever experienced. Then, suddenly, my eyes were drawn to something in the distance, a colossal gate made entirely of light. Immense and radiant, like nothing I had ever seen before. Even without getting closer, I could sense the essence of what lay beyond. Peace. A lasting peace beyond any fleeting joy I had known on earth. I knew that was heaven, a place where those who entered would never know pain again. But then, something made my chest tighten. There were people being pulled back, ripped away before they could enter. They were screaming, crying, and pleading in the name of Jesus. Yet, the gates remained closed to them. I couldn't understand it. If they were calling out to him, why were they being denied entry? I looked to Jesus for an explanation. Before I could ask, he answered, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven." Those words hit me like a ton of bricks. How many people did I know who called themselves Christians, but lived as if God was just a distant thought? How many went to church out of habit or tradition without ever truly giving him their hearts? And worse, how many felt safe just by uttering his name every now and then, when in reality they had never truly known him? The sight of that gate left me stunned. It was as if a long-hidden truth, one that everyone had chosen to ignore, had been brutally revealed. Many of those people believed they were destined for heaven, but at the last moment, they were dragged away. I wanted to close my eyes, to look away from it all, but I couldn't. The agony on their faces and the pure anguish in their cries were impossible to ignore. The despair of those who realized too late that they were never truly ready shattered me inside. It was different from witnessing the fate of the damned in hell, those who deep down never really cared. And yet, these people believed they were so large empty spaces, names that should have been there mattered. I looked at Jesus desperately in paintings or movies. This darkness, but no one seemed to notice, would never believe us. Then Jesus, a dream. Some other word. Everything around me began to Then, as the pages began to turn by themselves, my heart raced. I saw large empty spaces, names that should have been there, but were missing. The emptiness where their names should have been was like an open wound. Worse still, I saw names that were fading away. They appeared for a moment, only to be erased, as if they never existed. These were people who had once followed God but had turned away, trading eternal truth for temporary pleasures, choosing the world over what truly mattered. I looked at Jesus desperately, hoping he would tell me there was still time for them, but his gaze was serious and sad. I swallowed hard, feeling a pure terror like never before in my life. Before I could say a word, another presence appeared beside me, a colossal and radiant being who emanated an indescribable authority. I knew it was an angel, even if not the kind we see in paintings or movies. This angel was imposing and powerful, and its voice boomed like thunder as it declared, "Time is near, judgment is coming, many will be lost." Its words echoed within me like a final verdict, their weight almost unbearable. I looked around, struggling to comprehend the magnitude of it all. Everything was connected. The world was plunging into darkness, but no one seemed to notice. Time was running out while most were too absorbed in their own lives, their own problems, their own social networks and daily distractions to perceive what truly mattered. The urgency hit me with such force that my own spirit trembled. I longed to shout, to warn everyone, to do something, but the angel just looked at me, and in its eyes there was an undeniable certainty. Most would never believe us. Then Jesus approached with a serene expression, but tinged with an inexplicable sadness. "You must tell what you have seen," he said. "As long as there is life, there is hope. But time is running out." His words caught in my throat. I wanted to protest, to argue that no one would believe me, that everyone would dismiss it as just a dream, something that was only in my head. Yet I understood that it wasn't about whether people believed me or not. It was about telling the truth, sounding the alarm, and giving people the opportunity to see before it was too late. I didn't know how or where to begin, but deep down, I knew this was my mission. Jesus looked at me one last time, and without another word, everything around me began to fade. I felt my body being pulled back, as if sucked into a vortex. The light dimmed, his voice grew faint, and then I woke up. I opened my eyes with a start, and everything. She was dead for 3 minutes, delirium from lack of oxygen. But I knew to happen. At night, I felt presence me, to erase the memory. My life would never be the same. Away, as if my words were too disturbing to bear. Surrounded by doctors and nurses, with my family nearby, in tears, as if they had witnessed my death. Then came the words that shattered everything. She was dead for 3 minutes. 3 minutes, that's all. But it felt like an eternity to me. Without realizing it at first, tears began to stream down my face. How could I explain it? How to articulate an experience that went far beyond human understanding? I knew no one would truly understand. For the doctors, it was just a successful resuscitation. For others, perhaps just a delirium from lack of oxygen. But I knew the truth. I had seen it. I had felt it. And from that moment on, nothing would ever be the same. In the days that followed, I tried to forget what had happened, to convince myself that it had all been a trick of my mind. But the memories persisted, vivid and relentless, as if they were still unfolding before me. Then, even stranger things began to happen. At night, I felt presences in my room, shadows that seemed to be watching me. Whispers emerged from nowhere, murmuring words I couldn't understand, which gave me goosebumps. And then, there was the worst thing of all, sleep paralysis. I had never experienced it before, but now it became a frequent terror. I would wake up paralyzed, feeling something lurking nearby, something that intended to silence me, to erase the memory of what I had witnessed. The first time it happened, an inner instinct made me react. I tried to speak, and when I finally succeeded, a single word came out of my mouth: Jesus. At that very moment, the menacing presence vanished, the fear dissipated, and I knew without a shadow of a doubt that everything I had seen was real. After that night, I realized that my life would never be the same. I couldn't ignore what had happened, nor could I pretend it wasn't real. So I started talking, even though it was difficult at first. When I told my family, I saw the pity and doubt in their eyes, as if they were listening to me out of politeness, but without really believing me. Some even laughed, while others insisted that I must have been hallucinating. And some simply walked away, as if my words were too disturbing to bear. Yet, I persisted because deep down, I knew it was necessary. Amidst all that disbelief, some people began to listen attentively. In secret, some approached, seeking more details, wanting to understand, desperate to know how to avoid ending up like those I had seen in hell. For those souls, I felt it was worth going on, even if the world labeled me crazy or decided to ignore me. If just one person had understood the truth, up crying, as if I were still trapped in that, nor will I stop, because I'm treating God as a mere accessory for times of need. Even Jesus didn't force anyone to have faith. Some laugh, others reject it, but there are those for me. I was given this gift an unsettling feeling that something is trying to silence me. Other times, nightmares so vivid invade my sleep that I wake up crying, as if I were still trapped in that darkness. But each time, I did what I had learned. I said his name. And invariably, the darkness would recede, revealing something I had never truly grasped before. The name of Jesus holds an undeniable power. And if there's a force that strives to silence me, it only confirms that my mission is more crucial than I ever imagined. I cannot, nor will I, stop, because I know time is running out. After that experience, I began to see the world with different eyes. What once seemed normal, a life filled with distractions and trivial worries, now revealed hidden truths. I saw people wandering in blindness, living as if tomorrow were guaranteed, as if eternity were a myth. I witnessed countless souls who professed to be believers, but lacked genuine commitment, treating God as a mere accessory for times of need. More than ever, I became aware of the invisible battle being fought around us. Evil never needs to manifest openly. It creeps into everyday life, lurking in our thoughts and the small decisions that subtly lead us away from the truth. Now that I see it clearly, I can no longer close my eyes and pretend none of this is real. I realize my duty is not to force anyone to believe. After all, even Jesus didn't force anyone to have faith, but to speak clearly, to warn, to share what I witnessed and let each person decide for themselves. Ultimately, it all comes down to this choice. God doesn't send anyone to hell. People send themselves by rejecting him, ignoring the signs, and living as if nothing matters. I was about to become one of those people. I almost wasted my second chance, and I know many won't get one. So I speak. I tell my story. Some laugh, others reject it, but there are those who truly listen. And if even one life changes because of my words, then all of this will have been worth it, because I know what's coming. I've seen it. Time is running out, and when the door closes, there will be no turning back. Sometimes I wonder why I was given the chance to come back when so many perish without knowing the truth. I don't have all the answers, but I know it wasn't by chance. It wasn't just for me. I was given this gift so I could speak, so I could shout if necessary, to warn people of what awaits them if they continue to live on autopilot, indifferent to what truly matters. And this is the most terrifying part. Most people refuse to listen. They prefer to believe that everything will be fine, that there is plenty of time, that God will somehow fix everything in the end. I see in their eyes the same thought I had for so long at night, trying to paralyze me, to force those who turned away from the gates of heaven. Real, that this warning is for them. One thing I know for sure, but I know that when the door is finally closed, forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Silence me. Ever since I started sharing what I saw, the spiritual attacks have intensified. Sometimes I feel a presence in my room at night trying to paralyze me, to force me to give up. Other times strange thoughts emerge, as if a disembodied voice were trying to convince me that it was all a dream, that I'm crazy, that forgetting is the easiest way out. But I don't forget. I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I remember the darkness, the voices, the anguished expressions of those trapped in hell, and the despair in the cries of those who turned away from the gates of heaven. I remember the weight of Jesus' gaze, and I know that whatever happens, I have to keep going. Maybe some of you will come across this and simply scroll past, laughing or dismissing it as another crazy person's ramblings, and that's okay. But I believe someone out there will hear this message differently. There will be someone who will read these words and feel a knot in their stomach, a deep inner push that this is real, that this warning is for them. If that person is you, please don't ignore it. Don't just treat this as another internet story. I'm not here to scare anyone or to convince anyone with fancy words. I'm simply sharing what I saw, what I heard, and what I experienced. I'm saying, Don't wait until it's too late. Don't live under the illusion that you can always repent at the last moment, because there might not be a last moment. One thing I know for sure: my mission is to speak, to tell my story. And I will continue to do so until my last day, because I know time is running out. The world is changing, events are accelerating, and those who have eyes to see and ears to hear know that something momentous is happening. What I witnessed was not a warning just for me, it was for everyone. I don't know how many will believe, but I know that when the door is finally closed, no one will be able to say they weren't warned. If all of this is just a hoax, why are so many people around the world reporting similar experiences? What if it's real? What if time is really running out? Now, I'm curious. Have you ever had an unexplained spiritual experience? What do you make of all this? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because your opinion truly matters. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any life-changing content. Here we delve into truths that many prefer to ignore, but that have the power to transform lives. Since you've made it this far, I encourage you to watch the next video that pops up on your screen. It might just open your eyes even wider. I'll see you there. Take care.